Hi guys, it's Emily from Novel Novels and welcome to today's video. This is historical fiction over the eras, and I've got a selection of historical fiction books to recommend to you, from anything from the White Queen era, so the White sort of Queen, which I believe is set looking at the start of 1485, to the most recent one, which will be like the 60s, 70s, so making me feel old that the 70s are now classed as historical fiction when I was born in 1979. Yeah, that's making me feel very old. But I discussed with my book waffle group and I wanted to do like a historical fiction recommendations, and as they well pointed out, I like historical fiction over all the eras. So I've got historical fiction I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 books to recommend that are physically copies with me, and a few other books that I have not written down but I do recommend to you because I may not have kept them because my shelves are busting at the seams, but they were good books. So I don't know how much I'll talk about them in each book. The good thing is, because they're all books I've read, I know lots about them, so I don't need to be looking at the back of the book to be reminding me. And I've also made a few notes today. See, I can be organised occasionally. Now, I thought I would start off with the eras that I know about. So we're looking at the Tudor Queen's books, but looking at slightly before the Tudor Queen era, in my opinion. So for me, the best book is the one that I gave my copy away to a friend, and now I'm kind of like, I want it back. I want to get my own copy, and that was The White Queen, which talks about Elizabeth Woodville, who was Henry VIII's grandmother. Now, the Tudor Queen series that she started off is really, really, really good. And I loved The White Queen. It was brilliant. She's by far my favourite. But I also recommend The Kingsmaker's Daughter. There was another one. Lady of the Rivers, which is Elizabeth Woodville's even mother, I think. And then you've got The White Queen and the Red Queen, which is Henry VIII's grandmothers on either side. So the Tudor side and the Woodville side. So to me, the Red Queen is very good, but it's very hard hitting. It does tackle some things that you don't necessarily want to see. The White Queen is even better, because it's really interesting. It's got a bit of magical realism in it. So that one I find is fascinating. So I definitely prefer the White Queen. My cat's gone crazy. But I've also got the White Princess, which is brilliant, and it's about Henry VIII's mother. And I found this one really fascinating, how she got with Henry's father and their relationship, and I thought this was really, really, really good. Definitely recommend, before you start on the Tudor books, it's good to know the history of it. And yes, Philippa Gregory's books are more fiction than non-fiction, but she does include a factual bit at the back of the books, which I think is really fascinating. Now, another Tudor era that I love, you guys know I'm doing the Tudor along, and I found the first book in the series, Catherine of Aragon. Again, I personally recommend you read them in order. Catherine of Aragon, this book is very long. I rated it higher the second time because I got a lot more out of it the second time, but you do need to read it because it really gives you a history on how it all went. So yeah, I love this book. Alison Weir is probably my favourite author of the Tudor fiction, although I have read some Jean Plaidy and I do need to read some more Jean Plaidy. She's an older historical fiction writer and I thought she was really good. So these are the sort of recommendations that you start off with the Tudor eras. If you want more recommendations, ask me, or there are some other people I know that have got really great recommendations. Then, on the lines of Philippa Gregory, she also wrote other books which are set a little bit later in the 1648. So I've got some, these are not actually in the exact order actually, so I will talk about that one in a minute. So 1612 is the next one, and that is Stacey Hall's. Now, there are 2 Stacey Hall books that I recommend. I'm trying to not do too many books by the same authors. So I've got 2 Stacey Halls, 2 Philippa Gregory, although personally I recommend every single one of Stacey Hall's books. So this is the first one, The Familiars, which you all know is one of my favourite books of that year that I read it a few years ago. And it's set in 1612 in Lancashire. Fleetwood Shuttleworth, I remember her, she'd had loads of miscarriages. She wants to have a baby, and they employ someone who is known to make sure that women have babies and don't have miscarriages. It's like the witchcraft era sort of thing as well. And I found this really fascinating because to me this was a lot about female friendship, strength in the women, and finding your strength when you don't realise you've got it. And I love the protagonist in this. I love Fleetwood Shuttleworth. I love the sort of witchy past, Alice Gray. I love their friendship that they make. and I love how it ends. So this is a brilliant book. I will recommend this to everybody. Then we've got, actually, I need to go down here. We've got, I did not put this in order. Why did I not put this in order? You can tell I'm not organised. The Mercies by Kieran Milne Hargreaves. This is the only book I've got by her that's an adult book, and I have loved her writing it. She's also got like the middle grade books, but I love this adult book. I read this a long time on audiobook, or yeah, I listened to this on audiobook, and I've got my own copy of it now. The Mercies is thoroughly interesting. It's set in Iceland in 1617. It's really, really interesting. It's set around about the, like, again, the witchcraft era, but this is set in Iceland, and they were horrible to these people. The community in this is very good. It's about real women sort of sticking together, and they watch their island. Bardo is now a place of women, and then suddenly a sinister figure arrives. Sorry, I'm going to check my notes because it's been a while since I read this. But Absalom Cornet has been summoned to bring the women of the island to heel. With him travels his young wife Ursa. In her new home in Marin, Ursa encounters something she's never seen before: independent women. And then there's like evil and good and bad, and again real female friendships, which I love. And I thought this was fascinating. It's a great book to start off her adult books. It's not too long. My copy of it's just gorgeous. I love it. I just love the front cover and the spine. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful book. Then we've got the other Philippa Gregory book that I was going to show you, and that's Tidelands, and this is set in 1648. So this is I think Charles the Doodah is in this. It's like it's when there's some civil wars happening, and this is set in Sussex, so it's not too far from me. And where the land and sea join together, and again you've got like the witchcrafty element sort of thing coming in. And without a husband, Eleanor is struggling to make ends meet. The villagers suspect her of possessing dark secrets, and they watch her every move. Then she meets James, a man of stature, and then he's looking for a place to hide, and they have formed a friendship, and it's really, really good, and I really, really enjoyed this. It was the first time I'd read Philippa Gregory that was from a different era. I liked this. I did like Dark Tides, which is the second book in the series, and I believe she's got a third book coming out soon, but I preferred the first book to the other ones, so I thought it was really fascinating. And we've got this one, and I believe I've put this in the wrong order because this one should have been a bit earlier, and that is Hamlet. And this is set in 1596, so I have done this one in the wrong order, sorry guys. And this is set in 1566. So we all know the story of Hamlet. Hamlet is what the book's called by Maggie O'Farrell. I read this at the start of the year. It's about Shakespeare and his son. But this is Shakespeare's son, but Shakespeare's not actually named in this. It's more about Hamlet's mother, so Shakespeare's wife, the sisters, and Hamlet's story. And I thought this was really fascinating. It was a great take on it. It's my favourite Maggie O'Farrell book by far. I've not liked many of the other ones, but this I loved. I thought it was amazing. It was well worth the hype, and it really is about Hamlet's story. But it's not just about Hamlet's story. What I loved the most about this book was that it was his mother's story, and you go back in timelines and you do different timelines, and God, do I hate William Shakespeare when I read this. There are other books that I've read about Shakespeare, but this is brilliant because this is Shakespeare's wife's tale and their children's tale, and it's just really exciting and really fascinating. One I recommend to everybody. Then we've got my second Stacey Hall's books, which I think is going to be the next one. Yeah, because this is set in London 1754. I didn't like this as much as I like The Familiars, but the most recent book, to me, it's my third favourite, because Mrs. England, which is set a bit further down, which I don't have down with me, but I still recommend because I didn't want to have all the books by the different authors. But to me, Mrs. England is almost tied with The Familiars. The Founding's my least favourite, but it is still really good. This is about a child who is given up, and the mother decides she wants to find the child, and then she's told the child is not there and has been got taken by its mother. And it's that battle, and my copy that Charlie from Charles Heathcote gave me is gorgeous. Look at that. I love hardbacks for the beautiful editions, but I'm going to learn now only to get the hardback copy when I know it's really good. And this is really good. It's still fascinating, even though it's my third favourite. It's still really fascinating about a mother's love for her children and how she wants to fight to get her child back. And it is taking the child from the mother that was given to her as a baby when she's older, what is right for the child. And this is really fascinating and really, really good. I absolutely loved it. Now, I thought I had more Victorian non-fiction books, Victorian books, fictional, because I know obviously I've got a lot of Victorian classics, but I haven't actually kept as many of them as I thought I did, so I'm a bit disappointed in that. There are some I recommend, but I know 13th Tale is, I don't think that's Victorian, I can't remember. 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield is really good, but I don't know why I didn't keep that one. I think it's because it's a bit spooky. But the Victorian book that I have kept because I loved it and I thought was the best Victorian fictional book is Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. I have liked some of Sarah Waters' books. I've loved a couple of them, but her first book is my favourite by far, and I absolutely loved it. It's got LGBTQI plus elements smashing through the books. It is saucy, it's rude, it's naughty, it's amazing, and the writing is incredible. It's one I would like to reread. It's that good, I would like to reread it. And it's about sort of setting the sort of Victorian stage era, and the music halls and the oyster huts and Victorian London, and it's just so good. And it's about Nan King, an oyster girl turned music hall star turned rent boy turned East End Tom. Very, very saucy, but really, really good. The writing is absolutely incredible. It is just the naughtiest but the most well-written book ever, and it's just one of my favourite books. I think it's going to be my favourite books of the year because it's just absolutely incredible. Now we've got the pre sort of Austen-y kind of books, because obviously you guys know that I love like Jane Austen and I love Jane Austen's work. But the book that I picked to sort of do for this era, and this is set in 1840, and this is obviously Miss Austen. I didn't read that this year. I'm going to be reading it next year but I listened to it on audiobook last year. But it is the one I recommend because it is really good. Obviously we've got the other Bennet sister, which is also a book that I recommend. I did talk about that in my Jane Austen wrap up. That was the other Bennet sister is amazing, and that's by Janice Hadlow. But this is really good, and this is talking about Jane Austen's sister Cassandra, the other Austen girl, and there is little really known about her, but she lived longer than Jane, and she kept a lot of things. A lot of the Austen people hid this. I've just remembered I've got another Austen book actually up on my shelves that I didn't bring down, and that's the Austen Girls, which is by Jill Hornby. No, Lucy something or other. I will remember. But the other Austen Girls by Lucy Worsley. It's the Austen Girls by Lucy Worsley, which is a YA fictional book on Jane Austen's nieces, and that's really good. So this is the book I recommend, as well as the Austen Girls by Lucy Worsley. They are both fascinating fictional books set in Jane Austen's time, or just after Jane Austen's time, in 1840. Cassandra Austen returns to the village of Kintbury. She knows that in the corner of the village where she's staying, there's a cache of letters written by her sister Jane. As Cassandra recalls her youth, she pieces together buried truths about Jane's history and her own. So exciting, I can't wait to read this next year. It's brilliant. And now I'm going to talk about, where did I have not done this in order either? So we've got a couple of books set in the early 1900s, and this is the Suffragette. These are books about the Suffragette era. Now you guys all know the Suffragette era is very, very close to my heart. My mum's great nan, my mum's nan, and her and her mum were part of the Suffragette movement. They actually did march with the Suffragettes, and to me, it was a story. Basically, in our family, we grew up from my mum's mum, my nan. She talked a lot about female strength and the female strength that ran through the family, and how, I'm not dissing men, by the way, I don't want this to be like anti-men, but it talks about, we really got taught when we were growing up that women in our family were strong, that we fought to get our rights, we fought to get the rights of women, we fought for the underdog. And that's something growing up. My mum was one of 8. My mum's one of 8. She's still got all her siblings, which I love. I love my aunts and my uncles. And my mum's was full of from loads of children. And that side of the family, my nan always took in the underdog. She always took in the waifs and strays. We had a family. We grew up with loads of people that weren't blood became family, aunties and uncles that were extra aunties and uncles, and that was something we did. And my mum did. She always had lots of our friends that came. So a couple of my Charlie's friends called my mum their other mum, and we still got it. So now I've got family. I've got friends that have got kids who are they're my extra nieces and nephews and stuff, and especially and it's just brilliant. We've grown up, but the point of it was we had a family where it doesn't matter if you're not blood or not. If you're loyal to our family, if you come into the family and we take you in, you're part of the family, that's it. You know, we love you and we take you in and we support each other. So the suffrage, that really does spring from those early ancestors where we fought to help other people, to be friendships. We fought for our friends, we fought for everyone else, and then we fought for our women's rights. And that's why the suffragette era is very important to me. And the books set in the suffragette era, I want to read more and more of them. I've got a suffragette DVD in there, but I've been warned that a lot of those suffragette books are very hard-hitting. Some of what the women went through in the suffragette era is amazing. Like, it is so heartbreaking. There are tubes thrown down their throat. I could talk about that. If you want me to do a video on the suffragettes, please let me know, because I know so much about that era. So I've got a couple of books to recommend that I've read about them and I loved it. And the first one is Old Baggage by Lisa Evans. Now, I don't support this author because she's done some things that are triggering, and I believe that she is a bit problematic. So I haven't bought any of her other books, but this is a book that I do recommend because I kind of have to separate the author from the book, and that is the fact that this book does talk about the suffragette movement really well. I like the lead protagonist is Mattie Simkin, and she was on, and this is set in 1928, so it's just set after the suffragette movement, but it goes back in time to the suffragette movement, and her friend, like her companion, is the one that really does bring stream, because she actually fought in war and she actually went through a lot more. But she was still, Mattie was still jailed 5 times. She marched, she sang, she heckled Winston Churchill. She fought for our rights, and I love her friend in this, and I'm trying to see her friend's name. Why can I not remember her friend's name? I think it was Frida, but I cannot remember her friend's name, and it was, for the life of me, it's the underdog in this, that's Flea. The Flea. I don't know why she's called Flea, but that's what she's called. And the underdog really fought the battles, and it's not much said about the people that didn't necessarily shout the loudest but hurt the most and still fought, and I think that's really something that really springs to me. A book that I love as well, and this is another one, I listened to an audiobook, but I've recently got my own physical copy, and this is The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. It was an amazing book. I wanted my own physical copy, and this really does, it talks about the Dictionary of Lost Words. So it's about women again, but Esme is in this, and this is set a lot around about the suffragette movement, and again she's motherless and impressively curious, and then she collects words for a dictionary, and the Great War looms and the suffragette stuff happens, and this is an incredible book about female friendship again, about words and how words we use can be very important, because I'm really one for, when I'm angry and stressed, I use the wrong words, but this talks about how important of words, and as a book lover you gotta love this book. It's amazing. It does talk about books and words and things like that, so that's an amazing book. Next one is obviously a book that I loved so much, and that's The Four Winds, and this is set in 1934 in America, and it's at the time of the Great Plains, the Great Drive, and it's just, oh my god, this book will break you. It is the most emotional book I've ever read, and it literally broke me at the start of the year. I read this with the lovely Danny from Danny's Book World, and it's set in the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, and again it's a very female strong character, a woman that was fighting for her children. She would do anything for her kids. She would fight for the tooth and nail for them, and this book is fantastic. It is just absolutely incredible. Now, you guys know this book's set in the Second World War. I have read a 10 and a penny of them. I've read more than you could ever shake your finger at. I could do a whole video on World War II book recommendations, but because this is already 18, nearly 19 minutes, I've only got 3 to show you, but they are 3 amazing books and ones that I thoroughly recommend. I am reading a series called The Nightingale Nurses, and that book is that I'm not including any of those books because it's a whole long series, and it's one that I really am trying to work out which is my favourite in the series yet. I haven't decided, but that is another series to think about. Like I said, if you want any other recommendations on wartime books, please let me know, because I've got a million that I can recommend. This first one is part of a duology at the moment. I don't know if she's going to write a 3rd book in the series, because I've read her recent one is called Yours Cheerfully or something like that. But this is her first book, and it's Dear Mrs. Bird by A.J. Pierce. And again, I love this book. Again, this is a book about a strong woman, set in London 1941. Amid the falling bombs, Emmeline Lake dreams of becoming a fearless war correspondent. Unfortunately, she finds herself being like the typist for what is technically classed as an advice columnist. And this advice columnist isn't giving the best advice, so Emmeline gets involved, and she gets a bit cheeky and she gets involved. There are heartbreak in their stories, but it's, again, the writing is amazing, and it's about giving women real advice and what she goes through, and oh god, I thought it was a really brilliant book. Then obviously you couldn't do a wartime book without talking about one of my favourite authors, Elaine Everest, who writes the best wartime books. This is the first book in the series, The Woolworth Girls, start of a series that will always be one of my favourite series ever. There is an independent book she's written called The Patchwork Girls, which I read, and if you don't want to read a series but you want to start with Elaine Everest, The Patchwork Girls is a great one to start with. But that also does contain like thriller elements and really exciting elements, so I thought it was brilliant. This one's set, the first one's set at the start, just before the World War starts, or the start of World War II. And this is Sarah Castleton, and she becomes friends with Maisie, who's glamorous, and Shy Frida. Those three have become friends forever, and I've just started on the next generation, which is their kids, and it's just an incredible friendship. What those three women, the friendships that form in this book, and her grandmother as well, their Nan, oh my god, she's like one of the best women. I just love it. And yeah, great series to start with, great book on female friendship. It is hard hitting because it's set in the World War II, so you are prepared for the fact that there are going to be some emotional stuff in it, but it's beautifully written, and she's just, if you want books that are set then, she's just one of my favourite authors. The next one's one I got sent for a tandem read along, so it's a gifted product, whatever. And this is the Paris Library. This is set in Paris in the World War II. But it's also set in 1980s as well, so we've got another dual timeline of 1980 something like that in America, and I thought this was really, really good. The dual timelines are great, and it used again in female friendships and things like that. It's a very hard-hitting book, but it's so good. We've got two female protagonists. We've got Adele, who is in the World War II books. Thomas, just not really long, Thomas. And then you've got another timeline, and where will I find it? Lily, and that is Lily's timeline is in the 80s, and how it weaves together between Lily's story and Adele's story, and about how different eras in the time, the battles we face, it doesn't matter which era we're facing, a lot of us are still facing very similar battles. So that's what I loved about this book. I loved it was set in France as well, which I've not read too many books set in France. I will also say, what is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. That's another great book, World War II book. That's set in Germany. We've also got The Cheshire Schwarzwitz, which is set in Germany. That's another book I've not got with me, but I've got upstairs. The Cheshire Schwarzwitz is fictional, but it's based on a non-fiction. I didn't know that at the start, so it's in my non-fiction section. The Cheshire Schwarzwitz is an amazing book as well. It's set in Germany. There's loads of books that are set in wartime books, so I could recommend you, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. Then I've got two more recent books that I want to show you, and then we're done. So, The Miseducation of Evie Hepworth. I just read all about Evie for a tandem read along as well, but this is his first book. Matt Taylor is apparently writing a third book in this series. I absolutely look. I've got Charlie from Charles Heathcote gave me this, and I've got a signed copy, which I love. And this one's set in 1962. 16-year-old Evie Hepworth stands on the cusp of womanhood, but what kind of woman will she be? I love this book. This author writes books that are light, fun, but do tackle some things that are harder hitting. But the way it's done, it doesn't feel like it's overwhelming. It doesn't feel too much. I absolutely love this book. I think, to me, I would read this before you read all about Evie. I know some people in our group didn't like it as much, but I thoroughly loved this book. I thought it was absolutely incredible. Loved all about Evie. Books set in the 60s and 70s is something that I really want to read more of. Loved it, loved it, loved it. It will make you laugh, and it is just, there are some bits which will make you cry a little bit, but it will mainly make you laugh, and I love it. It's just freaking amazing. And then I couldn't do a historical fiction book without historical fiction recommendations without doing about Taylor Jenkins Reid. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Apparently my sister's now said it's problematic. I still bloody loved it. Thought it was absolutely incredible. It's set from the 50s to the 60s to the 70s to the 80s. Absolutely loved it. I've got loads of this author's books. I love this. I love Daisy Jones and the Six as well. I loved Malibu Rising. They've got another book that's just about to come out. She's got another book at the end of August that's about to come out. I will get it. I will buy it full price. I don't freaking care, because I know that this author cannot go wrong in my eyes. I've got another one of this author's books that I'm going to be reading in September, which you well know for my TBR. But this is about Evelyn Hugo, and she's glamorous, and she chooses someone to tell her story, and LGBTQI plus in it. It's got romance, it's got friendships, it's got scandalous stuff. You are on your toes. It's got more twists than you can shake your finger at. Bloody loved it. And that's it. I love historical fiction. It is a go-to genre that I'm loving. I've not read enough of it this month. I've gone a bit more contemporary because I needed lighter books because of everything that's been going on, but I do love historical fiction. I love all the different eras. What historical fiction eras do you think I should try that I haven't mentioned today? Are there any books that you recommend that are historical fiction? Let me know down below, and I would love to hear. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, not subscribed yet, ring on my ding-a-ling, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.